Whether you've been playing Overwatch for quite some time or you're rather new, you got to know that there have been completely busted ultimates throughout Overwatch's history. Compared to now, many ultimates have been completely reworked down in power level, and they used to be completely busted. So let's break down the top 10 ultimates in Overwatch history. Please smash that subscribe and like if you like the content. We're almost to 50,000 subscribers, and let's get into the video. Now, the first thing that we got to talk about is Nano. Now, everyone knows Nano is still a very powerful ultimate, but what you might not have known is that Nano used to be the linchpin of a ton of metas centering around both Reaper and Reinhardt, and that's because Nano used to give a 30% speed boost. You heard me right, you would have a speeding character running at you that also did more damage and took less. Imagine a Reinhardt coming full speed at you, and this happened a lot where you could nano a Rein and he was freaking Terminator, super able not only to catch you but kill you very fast, and there was nothing you could do about it. Now, a lot of people actually liked this meta and didn't like this change. It was definitely very strong, but pretty fun in general for the metas that it created and the awesome pop-offs that you could enable with Rein and Reaper alike. But this doesn't really hold a candle to the next two ultimates we have to talk about, both centering around Mercy. First off, let's talk about the 5-man res. You heard me right, Mercy could res 5 freaking people. If everyone died, Mercy could fly out and res them all if they were grouped up, which was very frustrating when you killed the entire enemy team, only for it to get completely undone. Now, this created a weird mini game where Mercy would hide as her team started to lose the fight, and then pop out and res everyone, while you played hide and go to seek, trying to seek her out. Now, that was definitely a very interesting, a bit frustrating, but also rewarding when you found that Mercy or hooked her or killed her mid-fly to go for that res, but it got a little bit frustrating when she could literally hide and spawn on certain maps like Temple of Anubis and res her team from complete safety. Now, this wasn't even the most broken state of Mercy, because we got to talk about Super Mercy, who had the capability to res a target, pop her ultimate and the current Valk ultimate, but when she did, she got another res instantly off of cooldown, and the res came off of cooldown every 10 seconds. So she could pop a res onto a target, pop her ultimate, res another person, fly around in Valk, allowing her to contribute to the team fight by healing or damage boosting a lot of people on her team, kind of like she does now, and then every 10 seconds she could res again. So she could res another time and then another time as the ult was ending, which turns out is actually one of the most busted ultimates we've ever seen, because getting a tempo 2-person res could just completely turn a team fight out of nowhere, and then add to it a really strong Mercy that could add a lot of value to the team. It was ridiculously strong. We had a super Moth meta for a while, and yeah, definitely pretty busted, but it wasn't as fun and crazy as this ultimate, which was the level 3 Torb ultimate. Basically, Torb used to have a turret that you could start at level 1 and build up to level 2 by hitting it, and it would be a stronger turret that could actually do quite a bit of damage and, you know, really hurt and harass the enemy team. But if you used your ultimate, it will level up to a level 3 freaking turret that shot goddamn rockets. You heard me right, it would be freaking rockets, and this was a really powerful ultimate when used correctly. Oftentimes enemies would just LOS it, but if you put a turret in a situation where, let's say, it was not peeking the enemy until they dove in, the enemy dove in with a dive composition, which was pretty popular back at the time in Overwatch 1, and then you activated your turret's ultimate, now it would just completely shred all the Tracers and Genjis and Winstons that jumped in, and it was pretty freaking sick. I actually really loved this ultimate. Even if it was a bit cheesy, it was insanely powerful when used properly. Now, that really brings us to Genji, who today just feels very weak and neglected by Blizzard, but there was a time back in the day where Genji had one of the scariest ultimates in the game. Not only were there a lot less things that could shut down a Blade, but Blade lasted freaking 8 seconds long and only 1,200 points to get. So you could build a Blade like at double the rate compared to now. Very freaking quick. And in addition to that, it lasted a whole 2 seconds longer, which was just insane. You could blade forever. Now, granted, back in the day, people bladed slower than my grandma, but still, Dragonblade was so damn powerful, and it lasted this long, so it became one of the scariest ultimates and very iconic during this time period. Honestly, today, Genji is just a little shell of his former self. Speaking of shells of her former self, let's talk about Sombra and her EMP, which instead of lasting just about 1 second, it lasted a whole 6 seconds and completely disabled all abilities and stopped enemies from doing basically anything. This was so freaking powerful because you had time to actually follow up. You could EMP an entire enemy team, and while they sat there, just little meat shields, you could go in and clean them up and finish them off. And while the EMP today is still decently strong, good luck ever actually killing multiple people or even one person within the time frame of that EMP. And especially with 6 seconds long, oftentimes you would kill enough people before they even got their abilities back that you would just win the fight. Incredibly strong and powerful, and used as a great counter against many compositions, including goats. Back when there was an anti-goat strategy with Wrecking Ball, Sombra EMP was one of the linchpins that actually became a very great anti-meta strategy. Next up, we gotta talk about Rally. Now, Brig's Rally seems pretty weak right about now and is slated to get a rework, but back in the day, Rally gave you armor that disabled a ton of amounts of damage, making you a lot beefier, and it lasted infinite. So when you got armor, if it didn't get manually removed by taking damage, you could carry that with you to the next fight. So imagine winning a fight with Rally, because it gives your entire team armor and you're very beefy, and then going into the next fight with a whole bunch of extra armor, which means that you're more likely to win that because you're walking into that fight with half a freaking ult, and then by the time you're done with that fight, you're pretty close to another Rally, which you're gonna get in the mid fight of the next fight and Rally again. Seems pretty broken? Yeah, it was pretty goddamn broken. And while Brig is definitely in a pretty bad state now, when I remember old Brig, I'm just gonna enjoy these times a little bit before, you know, Blizzard reworks her and makes her inevitably broken again. Next up, we do gotta talk about Sigma's Flux, which didn't really get that crazy of a change. It was a lot easier to build, but the biggest change was the fact that even if you killed the Sigma or slept him or hooked him, whatever you did to him, if the Flux went off, the Flux went off, and you would always get the effect, which is very, very freaking strong because now it's actually pretty strong still. I mean, Flux is one of the best ultimates in the game, and you can easily counter it, or not easily, but you can counter it if you actually shut him down. So the fact that it didn't have a way to get canceled before, pretty freaking nuts. Now, the next ultimate that we got to talk about is actually Supercharger, or how it was called Bongo, which was Orisa's old ultimate, where she put down a bongo, and any ally that stood near it had a 50% damage amplification for a whole 15 seconds. Now, the trade-off was, if they killed the bongo would actually stop working. Like, you could just kill it and remove it from the battlefield, but if the enemy started walking into the fight zone, like the fight was going to start, you activated Bongo and gave your whole team 50% extra damage. Most of the time, you would just completely shred them before they even got close to the Bongo. And a lot of players used Bongo incorrectly because they used it when the enemy was too close. But with proper Bongo use, this ultimate felt damn near broken. Now, the last ultimate that we got to talk about, and actually, in my opinion, the most broken ultimate on this list, is actually Kitsune Rush, just before it was nerfed. Now it's been nerfed down to a lot weaker than it was before. Instead of 50%, 30% movement speed, and a couple other factors about cooldown regeneration decreased. Even now, in its current state, Kitsune Rush could be one of the best ultimates of all time, and pre-nerf, it was freaking absurd, so damn powerful. I mean, leave it to Blizzard to somehow make something more broken than some of the most busted ultimates of all time. But, you know, give it a couple months and I'm sure we'll see something more broken around the corner. But you tell me, which of these ultimates do you think is the most broken of all time? And put down below, what do you think is the most broken abilities of all time? Which is a video we're going to do up next. Thank you so much for coming by. Please smash the subscribe so we can get to 50,000 subscribers. And I'll see you next time.